My name is Clara, and I was 32 years old when my husband stood up at dinner with his closest friends and said 5 words that would change everything. I'm married below my worth. I sat there, wine glass in hand, watching everyone laugh at his joke. Except it wasn't really a joke, was it? For 7 years, I had made myself smaller, quieter, less ambitious, all to fit into his vision of what a supportive wife should be. But that night, something inside me cracked open. What he didn't know was that I had once been someone different, someone with dreams, a business plan, and investors who believed in me. And what happened next? Well, let's just say the invitation I received 3 months later wasn't one he ever saw coming. If you're watching this right now, drop a comment below telling me where you're from, and make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to hear more stories. The chandeliers above cast a warm, golden glow across the white tablecloths, making everything in Lumiere look expensive and untouchable. I sat beside Daniel, my hands folded in my lap, watching him lean back in his chair with that confident smile I used to find charming. Now it just looked smug. So the deal closed at $2.3 million, Daniel said, swirling his wine glass. His friends, Marcus, Jason, and Tom, nodded appreciatively, like disciples receiving wisdom. I told them if they wanted quality, they'd have to pay for it. And they did. I smiled politely, used to these performances by now. This was Daniel's stage, and I'd learned my role. The supportive wife who laughed at the right moments and stayed quiet during the important parts. That's incredible, man, Marcus said, raising his glass. You've really built something. Well, you know what they say, Daniel replied, his eyes gleaming. Success loves preparation. And risk-taking. You can't be afraid to go big. I opened my mouth to mention the Johnson account I'd helped him strategize for last month, the late nights I'd spent reviewing his proposals, catching his mistakes. But before I could speak, Daniel's hand landed on mine. Gentle but firm. Honey, this is business talk, he said, his voice dripping with condescension disguised as affection. Why don't you tell the ladies about that book club you joined? The wives at the other end of the table looked up. Jason's wife, Michelle, gave me a sympathetic smile. She knew. They all knew. The men laughed, not cruelly but dismissively, which somehow felt worse. I was the punchline to a joke I hadn't heard. I pulled my hand away slowly, reaching for my water glass instead. I'm fine listening, I said quietly. The conversation moved on without me, as it always did. I let my mind drift, watching Daniel's animated gestures, the way he commanded attention. I remembered when we'd met in college, back when he was just a boy with big dreams and empty pockets. I was the one working 2 jobs, waitressing at night, tutoring during the day, so he could focus on his startup idea. I was the one who believed in him when nobody else did. You know what my secret is? Daniel continued, his voice pulling me back to the present. He was on his 3rd glass of wine now, his cheeks flushed. Knowing your worth. Too many people settle. They marry people who hold them back, take jobs that don't challenge them.
Me?
I always aimed higher. My chest tightened. Marcus shifted uncomfortably. Come on, man, Tom said with a nervous laugh. That's a bit. But Daniel wasn't done. He raised his glass higher, looking around the table with that intoxicated confidence that made my stomach turn. Let's be honest, he said, his words slightly slurred. I'm married below my worth. The table went silent. The clinking of silverware from nearby tables suddenly seemed deafening. I felt every eye turn toward me, waiting for my reaction. Michelle's mouth fell open. Jason coughed into his napkin. I should have felt humiliated. I should have felt small. Instead, something cold and clear settled over me like a sheet of ice. I looked at Daniel, really looked at him, and saw a stranger wearing my husband's face. I picked up my wine glass, my hand steady, and took a slow sip. Then I smiled, not the practiced, pleasing smile I'd perfected over the years, but something sharper. Remember those words? I said softly. The table fell into an awkward silence. Daniel's smile faltered. Marcus cleared his throat and tried to change the subject, but the damage was done. The rest of dinner passed in a blur of forced small talk and uncomfortable laughter. In the car ride home, Daniel stared straight ahead, his jaw tight. "You embarrassed me back there," he said. I almost laughed. "I embarrassed you? Making it weird when I was just having fun with the guys." "You're too sensitive, Clara." I didn't respond. I watched the city lights blur past the window, each one a reminder of how far I'd drifted from the girl who used to dream big. When we got home, Daniel went straight to his office without another word. I stood in our bedroom, staring at myself in the mirror. Who had I become? When had I started making myself smaller to fit into his world? I pulled out my phone and scrolled through old photos. There was one from 7 years ago, me at a business pitch competition, holding a trophy, grinning like I'd conquered the world. I remembered that day. I'd won first place for a consulting platform idea, something innovative and scalable. The judges said I had vision. Then I'd met Daniel a month later. He'd been charming, ambitious, exciting. When his startup took off, he'd asked me to put my plans on hold. "Just for a year," he'd said. "Once I'm established, you can do your thing." That was 6 years ago. I opened my laptop and found the folder I hadn't touched in years. Project Elevation, Business Consultancy Platform. My old business plan. Pages of research, financial projections, investor contacts who'd once expressed interest. I stared at the screen until my vision blurred with tears. Not tears of sadness, but something else. Something like rage mixed with hope. Daniel's words echoed in my head. "I'm married below my worth." Maybe he was right. Maybe I had been below his worth, because I'd made myself small enough to fit in his shadow. But that was going to change. The next morning, Daniel left for work without a word. No apology, no acknowledgement of what he'd said. He poured his coffee, straightened his tie in the hallway mirror, and walked out the door like nothing had happened. I watched him leave from the kitchen window, my hands wrapped around my own coffee mug. His car pulled out of the driveway, and something in me exhaled. The house felt lighter without him in it. I opened my laptop again, staring at that old business plan. The words on the screen felt both familiar and foreign, like reading a letter from a past version of myself, someone braver, someone who didn't apologize for taking up space. My phone buzzed. Linda Chen. I hadn't heard from her in at least 2 years. "Coffee today? I'm in town. Would love to catch up." Linda had been my mentor in business school, the woman who'd pushed me to enter that pitch competition. She'd been disappointed when I'd shelved my dreams for Daniel's career, though she'd been too kind to say it directly. I texted back immediately. "Yes. When and where?" We met at a small cafe downtown, the kind with mismatched furniture and local art on the walls. Linda looked exactly the same, sharp blazer, silver hair cut in a precise bob, eyes that missed nothing. "Clara," she said, standing to hug me. "It's been too long." We settled into our seats, ordered coffee, and for a few minutes, we just talked about surface things. Her consulting firm, my marriage, the weather. Then Linda leaned forward, her expression softening. "Okay, enough small talk. What's going on? You sounded different on the phone." I didn't mean to tell her everything. But once I started, I couldn't stop. The dinner. Daniel's words. The years I'd spent supporting his dreams while mine collected dust. Linda listened without interrupting, her face unreadable. When I finished, she sat back and crossed her arms. "Do you remember what you told me when you won that competition?" she asked. I shook my head. "You said, 'I'm going to build something that matters. Something that's mine.' You were on fire, Clara. You had this intensity that made people want to invest in you." She paused. "What happened to that woman?" I looked down at my coffee. "She got married." "No," Linda said firmly. "She let someone convince her she was small. There's a difference." The words hit me harder than I expected. My throat tightened. "He told me once that women don't handle risk well," I admitted. "That I should be grateful he was willing to take the big swings while I kept things stable at home." Linda's jaw clenched. "And you believed him?" "I don't know. Maybe. It was easier than fighting." "Clara." Linda reached across the table and grabbed my hand. "That man didn't marry below his worth. He married someone who scared him. Someone with more potential than he could handle." So he spent years convincing you to stay small. I felt something crack open inside me. Not breaking, cracking like an egg. Something ready to emerge. What do I do? I whispered. Linda smiled. You do what you were always meant to do. You build something. And you stop asking for permission. That night, I sat at the dining room table with my old notebooks spread around me. Research, contact lists, business models, everything I'd abandoned. I opened LinkedIn for the first time in 3 years and stared at my profile. My last position, supporting operations at Harrison Enterprises. Daniel's company. Not even my own title, just an extension of his. I began typing. Clara Weston, Strategic Business Consultant Platform Development Specialist. My hand shook as I updated my profile, adding my old accomplishments, my competition win, my degree, my skills. I uploaded a professional photo I'd almost forgotten I had, one where I looked confident and capable. Then I reached out to 5 old contacts, people who'd once wanted to back my consultancy idea. I kept the messages simple. Hi, it's been a while. I'm relaunching a project and would love to reconnect if you're open to it. I hit send before I could second-guess myself. Daniel came home late, smelling like whiskey and expensive cologne. He barely looked at me as he loosened his tie. What are you doing? He asked, glancing at my laptop. Working on something. He laughed, sharp and dismissive. Working? On what? A business idea. His expression shifted from amusement to something crueler. Clara, sweetheart, don't start this again. You tried the entrepreneur thing once. It didn't work out. I never actually tried it, I said quietly. I gave it up for you. And wasn't it the right choice? He gestured around our beautiful home, the expensive furniture. Look at what we built. You built, I corrected. He sighed, like I was a child throwing a tantrum. Don't forget who pays the bills around here. Who gave you this life? I closed my laptop slowly and looked up at him. Noted. Something in my tone made him pause. He searched my face for the usual softness, the usual surrender. He didn't find it. Don't do anything stupid, he said finally, then walked away. I sat there in the silence, feeling something powerful building inside me. Not anger. Not even hurt. Just clarity. The next morning, 3 of my old contacts responded. All 3 wanted to meet. The cafe where I met my first potential client was nothing like Lumiere. No chandeliers, no pretense. Just good coffee and honest conversation. The man sitting across from me was Gerald Thornton, a name that meant something in business circles. He'd built Thornton Holdings from the ground up, and his investment portfolio included dozens of successful companies. I hadn't known who he was when I'd agreed to the meeting. One of my old contacts had simply said, "There's someone who wants to hear your pitch." Ms. Weston, Thornton said, his handshake firm. He was older, maybe 60, with silver hair and sharp eyes that evaluated everything. Thank you for meeting me. Thank you for the opportunity, I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. Though I'll admit, I'm not entirely sure what this is about. He smiled. I've been following your LinkedIn. Your platform concept, the consultancy model for mid-sized businesses struggling with digital transformation. It's smart. Timely. I blinked. You saw that? I see a lot of things. The question is, are you serious about building it? Or is this just something you're playing with? The word playing stung, an echo of Daniel's dismissiveness. But instead of shrinking, I felt something ignite. I'm serious, I said. More serious than I've been about anything in a long time. Good. He leaned back. Then let's talk about how to make it happen. For the next 2 hours, we discussed strategy, market positioning, funding models. Thornton asked sharp questions and I answered them. Pulling from knowledge I didn't realize I still had, ideas that had been dormant but not dead. When we finished, Thornton stood and extended his hand again. You've got something rare, Ms. Weston, he said. Clarity of vision. Most people talk in circles. You speak in solutions. Does that mean? It means I'm interested. Send me a formal proposal. If it's as solid as this conversation, we'll discuss terms. I walked out of that cafe feeling 10 feet tall. Over the next 3 weeks, my life split into two realities. In one, I was still Daniel's wife, cooking dinners, attending his work functions, playing the role I'd perfected. In the other, I was Clara Weston, founder of Below Worth Consulting. I'd named it that in a moment of dark humor, reclaiming his insult as my brand. The irony felt delicious. Working from cafes and libraries, I rebuilt my business plan, refined my pitch, and reached out to companies that fit my target market. One client became two. Two became four. I used a pseudonym at first, CJ Weston. Not because I was ashamed, but because I wanted to succeed on my own merit, without Daniel's shadow or interference. The money started small. A few thousand here, a consultation fee there. But it was mine. Every dollar I earned felt like reclaiming a piece of myself. At home, Daniel grew increasingly volatile. His company was struggling, something about internal conflicts and client retention issues. He blamed his team, his partners, the market. Never himself. "They're all idiots," he ranted one evening, pacing the kitchen while I prepared dinner. "I'm carrying the entire company on my back, and they can't execute basic tasks." I nodded, stirring pasta, half listening. "Are you even paying attention?" he snapped. "Yes," I lied. My phone buzzed on the counter. A new client inquiry. I glanced at it, then back at Daniel. "You're on your phone during dinner now?" he said. "That's rude, Clara." The irony was staggering. How many dinners had he spent on his phone, taking calls, checking emails, while I sat across from him in silence? "Sorry," I said automatically, then caught myself. Why was I apologizing? I picked up my phone and read the message properly. Another referral from Thornton's network. A company looking for digital transformation strategy. "I need to take this," I said, walking toward my small office. "Clara," Daniel called after me, his voice sharp with annoyance. I closed the door. By week 5, Below Worth Consulting had 7 active clients and a growing reputation. I'd hired a part-time assistant and rented a small co-working space. The business was becoming real. Thornton called me one afternoon with news. "I've been watching your progress," he said. "Impressive growth. I'd like to formalize our arrangement. Bring you into a larger project I'm developing." "What kind of project?" "Corporate restructuring for a portfolio company. They need fresh perspective, someone who understands both strategy and execution. The contract would be significant. 6 figures. My breath caught. 6 figures? You'd earn it. But Clara, this would put you in a different league. No more hiding behind pseudonyms. You'd be front and center. I thought about Daniel, about what this would mean for our already fragile marriage. Then I thought about that dinner at Lumiere, his words echoing in my mind. "I'm in," I said. "Excellent. I'll send the details." "Oh, and Clara? There's a gala next month. Corporate networking event. I'd like you there as my guest. Consider it your formal introduction to the industry." After we hung up, I sat in my small office, staring at the wall. A gala. A 6-figure contract. This was real. That evening, I found Daniel slumped on the couch, scrolling through his phone with a glass of whiskey in hand. "I'm going to a gala next month," I mentioned casually. He looked up, confused. "A what?" "A corporate event." I was invited. "By who?" "A business associate." He laughed, actually laughed. "You? At a corporate gala?" "Clara, those events are for serious professionals, not." "Not what?" I asked, my voice dangerously calm. He had the decency to look uncomfortable. "I just mean you don't really have the background for that kind of thing. It's all high-level executives and investors." "I see. I'm not trying to be mean," he said, softening slightly. "I just don't want you to embarrass yourself trying to fit into a world you don't understand." I stood, smoothing my dress. "I'll keep that in mind." As I walked away, I heard him mutter, "Please don't make a fool of yourself." I smiled to myself. He had no idea what was coming. The dress I chose was simple but elegant, black, floor-length, with a subtle slit that felt confident without trying too hard. I stood in front of the mirror, barely recognizing the woman staring back at me. Linda had come over to help me prepare, playing stylist and life coach in equal measure. "You look powerful," she said, adjusting my hair, like someone who belongs exactly where she's going. I'm terrified, I admitted. Good. That means it matters. She stepped back, appraising me. Clara, listen to me. You've earned this. You rebuilt yourself from nothing in 2 months. That takes courage most people never find. Daniel thinks I'm going to embarrass myself. Linda's expression hardened. Then prove him wrong. Walk in like you already own the room. Daniel was in the living room when I came downstairs. He looked up from his laptop, and for a moment, something flickered across his face. Surprise, maybe even appreciation. Then his expression closed off. That's what you're wearing? He asked. Yes. It's a bit much, don't you think? I grabbed my clutch, refusing to let him diminish me. I think it's exactly right. Who invited you to this thing again? A friend. His jaw tightened. What friend? You don't have friends in that world. I met his eyes. Apparently, I do. He stood, crossing his arms. Clara, I don't know what game you're playing, but these events aren't for amateurs. These people will see through you in seconds. Then I guess I'll find out. You're making a mistake. I walked toward the door, then paused. Maybe. But at least it'll be my mistake. The ballroom was breathtaking. Crystal chandeliers, marble floors, hundreds of people in evening wear who all looked like they belonged in a magazine. I felt my confidence waver for just a moment. Then I saw Thornton near the entrance, and he waved me over with a warm smile. Ms. Weston, he said, taking my hand. You look wonderful. Come, there are people you need to meet. He guided me through the crowd with ease, introducing me to executives, investors, CEOs. Each introduction felt like adding another layer of legitimacy to who I was becoming. This is Clara Weston, Thornton would say. Brilliant strategic consultant. She's doing remarkable work in digital transformation. People listened. They asked questions. They took my business card. I was in the middle of a conversation with a venture capitalist when I felt it, that prickling sensation of being watched. I turned and saw Daniel across the room with several colleagues, frozen mid-stride, staring at me like he'd seen a ghost. Our eyes met. His face went through several emotions at once: confusion, disbelief, something that might have been fear. I smiled politely and turned back to my conversation. A few minutes later, Thornton excused himself to make an announcement. I watched him step onto a small platform, tapping a microphone. Ladies and gentlemen, he began, his voice commanding the room's attention. Thank you all for joining us tonight. As many of you know, Thornton Holdings is always seeking innovative partners who can help us shape the future of business. Daniel had moved closer, standing with his boss and several executives I recognized from his company events. He was staring at Thornton now, perhaps wondering why he hadn't been included in whatever announcement was coming. Tonight, I'm pleased to introduce our newest strategic partner, Thornton continued. Her firm, Below Worth Consulting, will be leading the digital transformation initiative for several of our portfolio companies, including the Harrison restructuring project. My heart stopped. Harrison, Daniel's company. Please join me in welcoming Clara Weston, founder and CEO. The room erupted in applause. Thornton gestured toward me, and suddenly everyone was looking. I felt my legs move automatically, carrying me forward through the crowd, up to the platform. I took the microphone with shaking hands, but when I spoke, my voice was steady. Thank you, Mr. Thornton. I'm honored to be here and excited about the work ahead. I kept it brief, professional, but as I scanned the room, I found Daniel. He stood there, pale, his colleagues whispering around him. Marcus was beside him, looking between us with wide eyes. I stepped down from the platform, and immediately people swarmed me with congratulations and questions. Through the crowd, I saw Daniel pushing toward me, his face a mixture of anger and shock. When he reached me, he grabbed my elbow, not hard, but insistent. We need to talk, he hissed. Now. I excused myself from the conversation and let him pull me into a quieter corner near the bar. What the hell is this? He demanded, his voice low and furious. Harrison? You're working with Thornton on my company? I'm consulting on a restructuring project, I said calmly. It's business, Daniel. Business? What game are you playing? I looked at him, really looked at him, and felt nothing but calm clarity. The one you taught me. His face went red. You did this to embarrass me. To get revenge for one stupid comment. This has nothing to do with you. Bullshit. You. Mr. Harrison. Thornton's voice cut through Daniel's anger like a knife. He approached us with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. I see you've met our new partner. Daniel's expression shifted immediately, that practiced charm sliding into place. Yes, Mr. Thornton. My wife and I were just... Your wife. Thornton's eyebrows rose. How interesting. I didn't realize you two were married. The pause that followed was excruciating. Daniel looked between us, realizing he'd just connected that might have stayed separate. Small world, I said lightly. Thornton's smile sharpened. Indeed. Mr. Harrison, I trust this won't create any conflicts of interest? Ms. Weston was hired based purely on merit. Her work speaks for itself. Of course not, Daniel said quickly. No conflict at all. Excellent. Thornton turned to me. Clara, the CFO of Brighton Tech wants to speak with you about a potential project. Shall we? I nodded, then looked at Daniel one last time. His expression had changed again, no longer angry, but something smaller, something uncertain. I followed Thornton back into the crowd, feeling Daniel's eyes on my back. Behind me, I heard one of his colleagues whisper, "Wait, that's his wife." The consultant. I didn't turn around. I didn't need to. The woman who'd once made herself small enough to fit in Daniel's world was gone. In her place stood someone new, someone who'd learned that the only person who could measure her worth was herself. And I was just getting started. The morning after the gala, I woke to an empty bed. For a moment, I thought Daniel had already left for work, but then I heard movement downstairs, the sound of pacing, of restless energy that couldn't settle. I found him in the kitchen, still wearing yesterday's dress shirt, now wrinkled and untucked. His hair stood in odd directions, and dark circles shadowed his eyes. He'd been up all night. Morning, I said, moving past him to start the coffee maker. He didn't respond immediately, just stared at me like I was a puzzle he couldn't solve. How long? He finally asked. How long what? Don't play dumb, Clara. How long have you been planning this? I poured water into the machine, measuring grounds with steady hands. I wasn't planning anything. I was building something. With Thornton. With my company's investor. I didn't know Harrison Enterprises was in his portfolio when I started. I turned to face him. And even if I had, so what? Are you saying I'm not allowed to work? You're not allowed to sabotage me. The accusation hung in the air between us. I could have gotten angry. A few months ago, I would have apologized, tried to explain, made myself smaller to ease his discomfort. Instead, I just laughed, a short, bitter sound that surprised us both. Sabotage you? Daniel, I didn't even think about you. That's the part you can't seem to understand. This wasn't about you at all. His face flushed red. The hell it wasn't. You show up at that gala, make your grand entrance, embarrass me in front of my colleagues. I embarrassed you? My voice rose despite my efforts to stay calm. You stood in front of our friends and told them you married below your worth. You humiliated me in public. And when I finally do something for myself, something that has nothing to do with you, you call it sabotage. It has everything to do with me. You're working on my company's restructuring project. Don't act innocent. Then maybe you should have thought about that before you spent years telling me I wasn't capable of anything. He opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. I never said that. You didn't have to say it. You showed me every single day. I grabbed my coffee mug and walked toward the door. I have a conference call in an hour. Excuse me. Clara. I didn't turn around. At work, the whispers had already started. I could feel them the moment I walked into the Harrison Enterprises building for my first official meeting as a consultant. People I'd seen at company holiday parties, people who'd smiled politely at me as Daniel's wife, now looked at me with something between confusion and respect. Is that her? I heard someone whisper as I passed. She's the one Thornton brought in. Wait, isn't she married to Harrison? I kept my head high, my expression neutral, and followed the assistant to the conference room where the executive team waited. Daniel was already there, sitting at the far end of the table. Our eyes met for a brief second before he looked away, his jaw tight. The meeting was professional, efficient. I presented my preliminary assessment of the company's digital infrastructure and proposed a phased transformation strategy. The executives asked questions. I answered them. Daniel said nothing, just stared at his laptop screen like it held the secrets of the universe. Afterward, as people filed out, Thornton approached me in the hallway. "Well done in there," he said. "You handled the tension well." "What tension?" I asked innocently. He smiled. "I may be old, but I'm not blind. Having your husband in the room while you essentially audit his company's failures, that can't be easy. It's not personal. It's business." "Is it?" He studied me carefully. "Clara, I've been doing this a long time. I recognize ambition when I see it, but I also recognize pain. Make sure you know which one is driving you." His words stayed with me long after he left. That night, Daniel came home earlier than usual. I was in my office, the spare bedroom I'd converted into a workspace, reviewing financial reports when I heard his footsteps in the hallway. "Can we talk?" he asked from the doorway. I glanced up. He looked exhausted, defeated in a way I'd never seen before. "Sure." He sat in the chair across from my desk, and for a moment, neither of us spoke. The silence felt heavy with everything we weren't saying. "I heard what people were saying today," he began.
About you.
"About us. And they think you're brilliant. They think I'm—" He trailed off, rubbing his face with both hands. "They think I'm lucky to have you." I waited. "Maybe they're right," he continued quietly. "Maybe I didn't see it before. What you were capable of." "Daniel, let me finish." He looked at me, then really looked at me. I was wrong. At the dinner, and probably 1,000 times before that. I was wrong. It was the closest thing to an apology I'd heard from him in years. Part of me wanted to accept it, to let this be the moment where everything changed. But another part, the part that had been rebuilt over the past few months, knew it wasn't enough. "Okay," I said simply. "Okay? That's it. What do you want me to say?" "I don't know. That you forgive me? That we can move past this." I set down my pen and leaned back. "Do you even understand what you're apologizing for?"
For what I said.
"For not supporting you." "It's not just about what you said, Daniel. It's about who you made me believe I was. For years, you convinced me I was less than. Less smart, less capable, less valuable. And I believed you because it was easier than fighting. I never meant. Intent doesn't matter. Impact does." I stood up, suddenly tired of this conversation. "You want forgiveness?
Fine.
I forgive you. But that doesn't change what I'm doing. It doesn't change who I am now." He stood too, and I saw something flicker in his eyes. Fear mixed with something else. "Are you leaving me?" The question caught me off guard.
Was I?
I hadn't really thought about it in concrete terms, too focused on building my business to consider the wreckage of my marriage. "I don't know," I answered honestly. "Right now, I'm just trying to figure out who I am without you." He flinched like I'd struck him. "Without me? Clara, we built a life together."
No.
"You built a life. I just lived in it." Before he could respond, my phone buzzed. A message from Thornton. "Need to discuss something urgent. Can you meet tomorrow morning?" I typed back. "Of course. What time?" His response came immediately. 8 a.m. My office.
Come alone.
I looked up to find Daniel watching me. "Work?" he asked. "Work," I confirmed. He nodded slowly, then left without another word. I heard the door to his office close down the hall, followed by the sound of a bottle opening. He'd taken to drinking more lately, I'd noticed. Another thing that wasn't my problem to fix. The next morning, I arrived at Thornton's office to find him standing by the window, looking out over the city skyline. "Clara, thank you for coming." He gestured to a chair. "We have a problem." My stomach tightened. "What kind of problem?" He turned to face me, his expression grave. "Someone's been spreading rumors about your company. Anonymous posts on industry forums, emails to potential clients questioning your credentials, suggestions that your relationship with me is inappropriate. What? It's subtle, but persistent. And it's starting to affect your reputation. I felt cold all over. Do you know who's doing it? Thornton pulled out his phone and handed it to me. On the screen was a screenshot of an anonymous forum post. Below Worth Consulting, anyone done due diligence on this firm? Owner seems to have come out of nowhere, now suddenly working on major projects. Connections through personal relationships rather than merit? Just saying, worth investigating before signing contracts. I scrolled through more. Each one was carefully worded to avoid outright accusation, but the implication was clear. I was a fraud, sleeping my way to success. There's more, Thornton said quietly. We traced the IP address on some of the posts. They came from Harrison Enterprises. The words hit me like a physical blow. Daniel. We can't prove it was him specifically. It could be anyone at the company. But given the timing, I handed back the phone, my hands shaking. Not with fear, with rage. What do you want to do? Thornton asked. I thought about it. The old Clara would have been devastated, would have questioned herself, maybe even given up. But I wasn't her anymore. Can you get me proof? I asked. Concrete evidence linking these posts to a specific account. I have people looking into it now. Good. Because if Daniel did this... I stood up, smoothing my skirt. If he did this, then he needs to learn that I'm not the woman he married anymore. Thornton smiled, a thin, sharp expression. I was hoping you'd say that. The evidence came 3 days later. Not just forum posts, but emails, dozens of them sent from a dummy account to my clients, potential investors, even journalists. Each one raised questions about my qualifications, my ethics, my relationship with Thornton. And they all traced back to Daniel's email server, his personal account, accessed from his office computer. I sat in my home office, staring at the documentation Thornton's IT team had compiled, and felt something inside me go very still and very cold. This wasn't just professional sabotage. This was personal. This was Daniel trying to destroy the one thing I'd built for myself because he couldn't handle watching me succeed.
My phone rang.
Thornton. Did you review the files? He asked. Yes. And I want him to face consequences. My voice didn't shake. What are my options? Several. We could report it to the company board, let them handle it internally. We could pursue legal action for defamation.
Or, he paused.
There's a board meeting next week to review the restructuring project. Daniel's team is supposed to present their progress. You're scheduled to present your assessment as well. I understood immediately. You want to expose him there. I want you to decide what happens next, Clara. This is your reputation on the line. Your career. I'll support whatever choice you make. I thought about it. About Daniel sitting in that conference room, confident and smug, not knowing what was coming. About all the times he'd made me feel small, insignificant, less than. About the years I'd wasted trying to fit into his narrow definition of who I should be. Set it up, I said. But I want to be the one who presents the evidence. Are you sure? I've never been more sure of anything in my life. The week leading up to the board meeting felt like walking through water. Daniel and I moved around each other like ghosts, occupying the same space, but barely acknowledging each other's existence. He'd come home late, sleep in the guest room, leave early. I wondered if he knew what was coming, or if he was just avoiding the wreckage of our marriage. I didn't tell him. I didn't owe him a warning. The night before the meeting, I stayed up late, rehearsing my presentation. Not just the business assessment, that was solid, backed by data and clear recommendations. But the other part, the exposure, that needed to be perfect. Linda called around midnight. Can't sleep? She asked. How did you know? Because I know you. And I know tomorrow is important. I told her everything, the sabotage, the evidence, the plan. When I finished, there was a long silence. Are you doing this for the right reasons? Linda finally asked. What do you mean? I mean, is this about protecting your business? Or is it about hurting Daniel? The question made me pause. Both? Is that wrong? Not wrong. Just. Clara, Make sure you can live with whatever happens after tomorrow. Because once you do this, there's no going back. I know. Good. Then do it with your head held high. You've earned that. The boardroom at Harrison Enterprises was exactly as I remembered from previous meetings: long mahogany table, leather chairs, walls lined with awards and framed photos of company milestones. Daniel was already there when I arrived, sitting with his team, laughing at something his assistant said. He looked up when I entered, and our eyes met. Something passed between us, a final acknowledgement of what we'd once been to each other, before everything fell apart. Thornton was at the head of the table, flanked by the other board members. The company's CFO, COO, and several senior executives filled the remaining seats. Excellent, we're all here, Thornton said. Let's begin. Mr. Harrison, why don't you start with your team's progress report? Daniel stood, confident and polished. He launched into his presentation: growth projections, new client acquisitions, efficiency improvements. It was smooth, practiced, and about 70% fabricated. I knew because I'd reviewed the actual numbers. The gap between his claims and reality was significant. The board asked questions. Daniel answered them with the easy charm that had once fooled me too. Then it was my turn. I stood, opened my laptop, and pulled up my presentation. Thank you for the opportunity to present today. Over the past 6 weeks, I've conducted a comprehensive assessment of Harrison Enterprises' operations, infrastructure, and strategic positioning. I walked them through my findings: the inefficiencies, the outdated systems, the misallocated resources. With each slide, I watched Daniel's confidence erode slightly. The numbers I presented contradicted his rosy projections. However, I continued, before we discuss solutions, there's a more pressing issue that needs to be addressed. The room went silent. Daniel shifted in his seat. Over the past month, my company has been the target of a coordinated defamation campaign. Anonymous posts on industry forums, emails to clients questioning my credentials, suggestions of impropriety in my business relationships. I pulled up screenshots, showing them on the large screen. Several board members leaned forward, reading. Initially, we couldn't identify the source. But thanks to Thornton Holdings' IT security team, we traced these communications back to this company. Specifically, I pulled up the next slide. To an email account belonging to Daniel Harrison. The room erupted. Daniel shot to his feet. That's absurd. I never. The evidence is quite clear, Thornton interrupted, his voice cutting through the noise. We have logs, IP addresses, and even recovered drafts from your account. Would you like to review them? Daniel's face went white, then red. This is a setup. She's manipulating. Mr. Harrison, the CFO cut in, his voice icy. Are you suggesting Ms. Weston fabricated evidence? Because that's a serious accusation. I'm saying she has a conflict of interest. She's my wife, for God's sake. This is obviously personal. Personal. I kept my voice level, professional. You're right. You sabotaging my business is personal. But my assessment of this company is based purely on data. Data that, I should note, contradicts several claims you made in your presentation today. I pulled up a comparison slide, Daniel's projections next to the actual figures. The discrepancies were damning. The board members exchanged glances. Thornton leaned back in his chair, his expression unreadable. Mr. Harrison, the COO said slowly, would you like to explain these inconsistencies? Daniel looked around the room, searching for an ally.
He found none.
The numbers are their projections. Estimates. We can expect honesty, Thornton said quietly. And integrity. Two things that seem to be in short supply at the moment. The silence that followed was deafening. I watched Daniel's world collapse in real time, the realization that his actions had consequences, that he couldn't charm or manipulate his way out of this. I think, Thornton continued, we need to discuss next steps in private. Ms. Weston, thank you for your presentation. It was illuminating. I gathered my materials, my hands steady despite the adrenaline coursing through me. As I walked past Daniel, he grabbed my arm. Clara, please, he whispered. Don't do this. I looked down at his hand, then up at his face. I didn't do this, Daniel. You did. I pulled free and walked out, leaving him standing there with nothing but the wreckage he created. Outside the building, I made it to my car before my hands started shaking. Not from fear or regret, but from the sheer weight of what I'd just done. I'd stood in front of those men who'd once seen me as nothing more than Daniel's wife, and I'd taken him down with facts and evidence and unwavering resolve. I felt powerful, and I felt heartbroken, because somewhere beneath the anger and betrayal, I still remembered the boy I'd fallen in love with in college. The one with big dreams and bigger heart. When had he become this person? Or had he always been this way, and I'd just been too blind to see it? My phone buzzed. A text from Thornton. Board voted to suspend Harrison pending investigation. They want you to take over the restructuring project directly. Interested? I stared at the message for a long time before responding. Yes.
I didn't go home that night.
Instead, I checked into a hotel. Nothing fancy, just a quiet room where I could think without the weight of my marriage pressing down on me. The news spread fast. By the next morning, my phone was flooded with messages. Some from colleagues congratulating me. Some from mutual friends asking if I was okay. One from Linda that simply said, "Proud of you." And then there was a text from Marcus, Daniel's best friend. "He's not okay. He lost everything. But he's not done with you yet." I stared at that message for a long time, trying to decide if it was a warning or a threat. Either way, I wasn't surprised. Daniel had never been good at accepting consequences. Over the next week, I moved forward with the restructuring project while Daniel's professional life unraveled. The board suspended him indefinitely. His colleagues distanced themselves. The investors Thornton had introduced him to years ago quietly pulled their support. I should have felt vindicated. Instead, I just felt tired. I was working late one evening, reviewing employee retention strategies, when my office receptionist called. "Ms. Weston, there's someone here to see you. He says he's your husband." My chest tightened. "Tell him I'm busy." I did. "He says he'll wait." I closed my laptop with a sigh. "Send him in." Daniel looked terrible. His suit was wrinkled, his hair unkempt, his eyes hollow. He'd lost weight in just a week, his face gaunt and shadowed. "You look like hell," I said, then immediately regretted it. Even after everything, I couldn't fully suppress the part of me that still cared. "I feel worse." He stood awkwardly in the doorway, like he wasn't sure if he was allowed to come in. "Can we talk?" I gestured to a chair. He sat, perching on the edge like he might need to run at any moment. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The silence was heavy with 7 years of marriage, of love turned sour, of dreams deferred and betrayed. "You win," he finally said. "Congratulations. Is that what you think this is? A competition? Isn't it?" He laughed bitterly. "You wanted to prove me wrong, to show me I was an idiot for saying what I said. Well, mission accomplished. I've lost my job, my reputation, his voice cracked. My wife." I felt something twist in my chest. "Daniel, I didn't do this to destroy you. I built my business in spite of you, not because of you. And when you tried to tear it down," I shook my head. "When you tried to sabotage me, you made a choice. This is just consequence." "I know." He rubbed his face with both hands. "God, Clara, I know. I was angry and scared, and I did something unforgivable. But I need you to understand." He looked up, his eyes red. "You made me feel small." The words hung in the air between us. I wanted to be angry, to reject the accusation entirely, but I forced myself to really hear what he was saying. "Explain that," I said quietly. "When we met, I was nobody. Just some guy with an idea and no money. You were the smart one, the capable one. You won competitions, impressed professors, had investors interested. And I was the boyfriend who was lucky to have you. So you spent our entire marriage trying to make me smaller than you?" I didn't mean to. His voice was barely a whisper.
"But yeah."
"I guess I did. Every time you asked about my work, I felt like you were judging me. Every time you suggested something, I felt inadequate. So He trailed off. You made me feel inadequate instead, I finished. He nodded, shame written across his face. I told myself I was protecting my ego, but really, I was just being a coward. And by the time I realized what I'd done, you were already gone. Not physically, but you'd already left me. You just didn't know it yet. I sat back in my chair, processing this. It didn't excuse what he'd done. It didn't erase the years of subtle cruelty, of dismissiveness, of making me question my own worth. But it did make him human. Flawed and damaged and painfully, devastatingly human. What do you want from me, Daniel? I don't know. He laughed without humor. Forgiveness? Understanding? A time machine? I can't give you the last one. And the first two. I took a deep breath. I need time. I know. I just wanted you to know that I see it now.
What I did to you.
What I took from you. He stood up slowly. You were always worth more than I was ready for. As he walked to the door, something in me shifted. Not forgiveness, exactly, but maybe the beginning of understanding. Daniel? I called out. He turned. I hope you find whatever it is you're looking for. Whatever makes you feel like you're enough. His eyes filled with tears. He nodded once, then left. I sat alone in my office, staring at the door long after it closed. My phone buzzed. Thornton, asking about tomorrow's strategy meeting. Life moving forward, indifferent to my emotional turmoil. I picked up the phone and responded, ready when you are, because that was the truth. Whatever happened with Daniel, whatever remained of our marriage, I was ready. Ready to keep building, keep growing, keep proving to myself that I was exactly as capable as I'd always known I could be. 2 weeks later, I received divorce papers. Daniel had filed quietly, through a lawyer, with a straightforward division of assets. No drama, no fight. Just a clean ending to something that had stopped being a marriage long before either of us admitted it. I signed them in my office, feeling strangely calm. Linda sat across from me, watching with concern. How are you feeling? She asked.
Free, I said.
And I meant it. That night, I did something I hadn't done in years. I went through old boxes from storage, pulling out mementos from my college days. Photos from the business competition. My original business plan. Letters from professors who'd believed in me. I found one letter in particular from my favorite professor. Clara, you have something rare, the ability to see solutions where others see only problems. Don't ever let anyone convince you to dim that light. I'd read those words when I was 22 and felt invincible. Then I'd spent 7 years letting someone convince me I was ordinary. But I wasn't ordinary. I never had been. I took the letter and pinned it on the wall of my office, right where I could see it every day. 6 months later, Below Worth Consulting had grown beyond anything I'd imagined. What started as a small consultancy had evolved into a full-service digital transformation firm with 15 employees, offices in 3 cities, and a client list that read like a who's who of Fortune 500 companies. Thornton had been true to his word, introducing me to key players and backing my expansion. But the success was mine. Every client I earned through merit, every employee I hired through careful selection, every strategic decision that paid off, those were mine. I'd moved into a new apartment downtown, all glass and light, with a view of the city that made me feel like I was on top of the world. Sometimes I'd stand at the window with my morning coffee and think about how far I'd come. Not just professionally, but personally. I'd rediscovered who I was beneath the weight of Daniel's expectations. I'd learned to trust my own judgment, to speak up without apologizing, to take up space without feeling guilty about it. One morning, my assistant buzzed me. Ms. Weston? There's a reporter from Business Today here for your interview.
Right. The interview.
They were doing a feature on women entrepreneurs who disrupted their industries. My face was going to be on the cover. The reporter, a sharp woman in her 30s named Jessica, set up her recording equipment while I settled into my desk chair. So, she began, let's start at the beginning. Below Worth Consulting. Unusual name for a business. What's the story there? I smiled. I'd been asked this question before, but I never tired of answering it. Someone once told me I married below my worth, I said. At the time, it felt like the worst insult imaginable. But later I realized he was right, just not in the way he meant. I was below my own worth because I'd made myself smaller to fit into someone else's vision of who I should be. And the name? It's a reminder. Below worth where I started, but not where I stayed. Every time I see it on my business cards, I remember that my worth isn't measured by anyone else's standards but my own. The interview lasted an hour, covering everything from my business philosophy to my approach to work-life balance. When it was over, Jessica packed up her equipment and paused at the door. "Off the record," she said, "I looked into your background while researching this piece. I know about your ex-husband, about what happened at Harrison Enterprises." My stomach tightened. And I think it takes incredible strength to turn that kind of pain into this kind of success. Not revenge, success. There's a difference. "Thank you." After she left, I sat alone in my office, letting her words sink in. Not revenge, success. That distinction mattered to me more than I'd realized. The magazine came out 3 weeks later. I bought 5 copies, feeling simultaneously proud and embarrassed by my own face staring back at me from the newsstand. The headline read, "Clara Weston, the woman who redefined resilience." Inside was a 2-page spread with photos from my office, quotes about entrepreneurship and empowerment, and a sidebar about Below Worth Consulting's rapid growth. I posted a photo on LinkedIn with a simple caption, "Grateful for the journey. Honored by the recognition. Excited for what's next." The responses were overwhelming. Hundreds of comments, messages from women who'd experienced similar struggles, offers for speaking engagements and podcast interviews. And then, buried among the congratulations, I found a message from an unexpected source. Daniel's old email address, though the message came from a new account. "Clara, I saw the article. I'm teaching business ethics at the community college now. Showed your interview to my students. They were inspired. I was too. Thank you for becoming the woman I couldn't see. Proud of you, even if I have no right to be." I read it 3 times, feeling a complicated mix of emotions. Not anger anymore. Not even sadness. Just a quiet acknowledgement of what we'd been and what we'd both become.
I didn't respond.
Some things were better left as closed chapters. A month later, I received an invitation to speak at a women's entrepreneurship conference. 500 attendees, all of them looking to start or grow their own businesses. I stood backstage, listening to my introduction, feeling nervous in a way I hadn't in months. This was different from board meetings or client presentations. This was personal. Please welcome to the stage Clara Weston, founder and CEO of Below Worth Consulting. I walked out to applause, standing in the spotlight, looking out at hundreds of faces, women of all ages, all backgrounds, all of them seeking something I'd found the hard way. "Thank you for having me," I began, my voice steady. "I want to start by telling you about the worst dinner party I ever attended." I told them everything. The humiliation, the moment of clarity, the decision to rebuild myself from the ground up. I told them about the fear and doubt, about the small wins that led to bigger ones, about learning to measure my own worth. "Someone once said I married below my worth," I concluded, looking out at the audience. They were right. I was meant for more, not more money or more success, though those things came. I was meant for more than a life spent making myself small to fit someone else's expectations. I paused, letting the words settle. "So here's what I want you to know. Your worth isn't determined by who believes in you. It's not measured by who validates you or who tears you down. Your worth is inherent, unchangeable, yours. The only question is whether you're brave enough to claim it." The applause was deafening. Women stood, some wiping tears, others nodding like I'd given voice to something they'd felt but couldn't articulate. Afterward, dozens of women approached me, sharing their stories. A teacher who'd been told she wasn't business-minded enough. A lawyer who'd been passed over for partner because she didn't fit the culture. A mother who'd given up her career and was trying to find her way back. I listened to each one, offering advice where I could, mostly just validating their experiences and their right to want more. The last woman in line was younger, maybe 25. "Ms. Weston," she said nervously, I just wanted to say, my boyfriend keeps telling me my business idea is silly, that I should focus on something more practical. But hearing your story, I think maybe I should just do it anyway. I took her hand. Do it anyway. And if he can't support your dreams, find someone who will. Or better yet, I smiled. Be your own support. She nodded, tears in her eyes, and walked away with her shoulders a little straighter. That night, I returned to my apartment and stood at the window, looking out over the city. My city now, in a way it hadn't been before. I'd claimed my space in it. I thought about Daniel, teaching ethics to business students. I hoped he was finding his own redemption, his own path to becoming someone better. I thought about the woman I'd been at that dinner table, swallowing humiliation with a smile. And I thought about who I'd become, not in spite of that moment, but because of it. Because sometimes the worst things that happen to us crack us open just enough to let the light in. My phone buzzed. A message from Thornton. Board approved the international expansion. London office opens in 3 months. Ready to build an empire? I smiled and typed back, always. Below my window, the city sparkled with possibility. Somewhere out there were women sitting at their own terrible dinner parties, hearing their own devastating words, wondering if they could survive the blow to their self-worth. I hoped they'd find what I'd found, that survival isn't enough, that we're meant for more than just enduring, that our worth isn't something anyone else can grant or take away. I picked up my tablet and opened a new document. Title: Below Worth, a Memoir. If my story could help even one person find their way back to themselves, it would be worth telling. I began to type. The chandeliers above cast a warm, golden glow across the white tablecloths, making everything in Lumiere look expensive and untouchable. Outside, the city hummed with life. Inside, I was finally fully home in my own skin. And that, I'd learned, was worth everything. Drop your thoughts in the comments below. If this story moved you, hit that like button and subscribe for more stories about resilience, redemption, and reclaiming your power.